Everyone, I am Gerald Andigua, and for today's video, we will discuss about the information sheet 1.5 to 3, table of specification, and task sheet 1.5 to 3. In this lesson, you will learn how the table of specification is prepared. Table of specification, a table that shows that will be tested or taught, is the table of specifications. A table of specification is a two-way table that matches the objectives or content you have taught with the level at which you expect students to perform. It contains an estimate of the percentage of the test to be allocated to each topic at each level at which it is to be measured. In effect, we have established how much emphasis to give to each objective or topic. Now, let's proceed to the part of the table of specification. First, number 1, objectives, content, topic. These are the content. Number 2, levels of learning. It means your question shall be divided into 2 levels of learning: the knowledge, comprehension, and application. And also it includes the factual knowledge, which is the recognition and recall of facts. These are the example. The figure 1 in the symbol A6013 signifies A. Tensile strength, B. welding, and D. maximum weld length. Next is comprehensions. It means to interpret, translates, summarizes, or paraphrase a given information. Now here's the example. The meager is used to. Now, what is the meaning of meager? Meager or merge means to describe something that is not enough or not of a good quality. Now here's the example. A, B, C, D. A. Measure the amount of illumination. B. Determine the speed of electric motor. C. Measure the resistance of a lightning cable. D. The test and installation resistance of a circuit. Next is application. Uses information in a situation different from original learning content. Example, to measure the voltage of a circuit, you connect A voltmeter across the line, B an ammeter across the line, C a voltmeter in series with the line, D and ammeter in the series with the line. This is a sample. The number of items is not prescribed. The trainer should decide on the number of items based on the content of the competency. Now let's proceed to the table of specifications. As you can see, there is a objective, content, area topics, knowledge, comprehension, application of, and number of items, and percent of test. Learners training requirements 20%, session plan 20%, and assessment instrument institutional 20%. Basic instructional materials in objective content area topics, it has 30%, learning and teaching resources 10%, and the total of 100%. Test item distribution. It contains content objectives, factual knowledge, comprehension, application, total number of item, and percentage. Now, for the purpose of validating the current competencies of the trainees or for identifying mastered contents, item placement may be identified in the table of specification for easier analysis. At this point, you also have to decide how many questions are needed to measure learning, what type of questions will be asked, and whether a written assessment is sufficient to measure the competency. In most cases, for skills training, performance evaluation with interview may be more appropriate as an assessment instrument, but the effectiveness of written assessment instrument may be harnessed through the ingenuity and skills of the trainer. If, however, the trainer decides for a performance evaluation, it should be reflected in the evidence plan. At this point, we recognize that 25% of our test is to be on knowledge, and 35% on comprehension, and 40% on the application. This does not mean that we must have 25 knowledge questions. It does mean that the score on the test will reflect comprehension and application in equal amounts, and knowledge to a lesser degree than knowledge or application. It might be that at this point you want to compare the test provided by the textbook publisher with your completed table of specification. If they match and you think the questions are well written, you may decide to use the test or parts of the test provided with the text. On the other hand, you may find that it will be necessary for you to create a test to provide an accurate assessment of what the students in your class have learned. Now, let's discuss what are the contents of task sheet 1.5 to 3. First, there is a title, Prepare Table of Specification, Performance Objective. Given one competency of the qualification assigned to you, you should be able to prepare a table of specification. Supplies or materials, TR and CBC or training methodologies and curriculum-based competency. Equipment, equal to PC, printer with ink. Steps, procedure. Number 1. Based on your evidence plan, identify the evidences to be gathered by the written test. Write this in the first column. Number 2. Decide on the percentage of distribution of test items based on the emphasis of your training and the importance of the topic, content or objective to the main skill to be mastered. Write the percentage on the last column. Number 3. Set number of items for the whole test. 4. Compute for the number of items of each content. 5. Compute for the number of the items per level of learning. 6. Present your work to your trainer. 7. Keep a copy of this table for use in the next task sheet. Assessment methods, portfolio assessment, questioning, performance, criteria checklist. Information sheet 1.5 to 4 written test. In developing test items, always consider the 5 characteristics of good test: validity, reliability, objectivity, discrimination, and ease of administration and scoring. 1. Examine the established training regulation and determine your objective. 2. Construct the table of specification. 3. Construct test items more than the number required for a set of competency assessment instrument. Let's proceed to the pointers in the formulation of test questions for written test. What should we do first? Number 1. Keep in mind that it is not possible to measure all outcomes of instruction with one type of test. 2. Devise your items so that they require the trainee to actually apply things learned rather than merely recalling or recognizing facts. 3. Avoid tricky or catchy questions. And that would be all. Thank you for your listening.